What's up, everyone? Welcome back, and thank you for stopping in. Tonight I have an in-depth look for you guys at some of the strongest locking folding knives period in the world. We will take a look at 4 different lock mechanisms. We'll go over the knives and the locks and what makes them locks good and great, how they work. We will talk a bit about each knife and kind of keep things at a quick pace before we hop into the meat and potatoes of the video. If you like content like this, EDC content, gear reviews, hit the subscribe button down below the video. I would love to have you here. And if you would, before you head out, give the video a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. It helps get the video circulated. It helps the channel grow, and I greatly appreciate all of you who do those things. It is so appreciated. Now we will hop into the first lock and the first knife. This is the USA made Buck 110. Now this is not the original Buck 110 series of knives. This is the Buck 110 Slim Pro. Now what makes this different than the standard Buck 110 is it has a pocket clip for starters. The original Buck 110s did not have a pocket clip. It's also got an update in handle materials, which is micarta, and it is very well done. And this has S30V blade steel, which is an upgrade from the original blade steel that Buck 110s came with. But the main part that we are going over is that backlock. Now, the backlock has been around for basically ever. Since locking knives came into existence, the backlock has been around. A very simple mechanism, but they did it right the first time that they basically did a lock on a folding knife. Till this day, this lock is one of the strongest locks, period, on a folding knife that you can get. Some of the testing that I have seen done, these can endure so much force that it's unbelievable, to the point where I don't think I've ever seen a backlock fail. Typically, the weight will snap the handle from the blade before the lock will fail. And that's what they mean by the knife itself will fail before the lock will fail. You'll hear people say that, and that's what they mean. The lock doesn't fail. It's the amount of weight or force that is literally ripping the handle from the blade. And when we talk about force, there are many types of force, but we're talking about stagnant weight or consistent pressure that is calculated in weight, and it's going to be a generalized thing. Basically, think of it as this much weight hanging on the knife, and that is basically what it is equivalent to. And I have seen backlocks take over 1,000 pounds of force and continue to keep going. And I've seen them get up to 2,000 pounds. And that is typically when the handle is ripped from the blade. And that is the recorded data that I have seen across the board with backlocks. It's a very simple lock, as I said. You will see that this bar here goes under the tang of the knife and prevents it from going anywhere until this is pushed, and then you can see that the lock is disengaged, and that allows the tang of the knife to be brought forward, and then the knife can close. Very simple, but so very well done and thought out. There's nothing else needed in the knife world but something like this. But it's great to have tons of different options. I would say the majority, 90% of knives do not have what these knives have in the strongest locks in the world. A lot of knives do not use these locks so much. The Backlock is probably the most common out of all of these, and a lot of knives are not made with backlocks anymore. There are some, but it has moved to a whole different style of locks. Liner locks, frame locks, bolster locks, button locks, compression locks, and ball bearing locks are pretty much the rage right now. Backlocks have really taken a backseat along with these other three locks. They just really are not out there. It's a very niche lock and knife. And that kind of brings us into the next knife. This is the Cold Steel AD10. This is an Andrew Demko design with Cold Steel. It has a S35 VN satin drop point blade. You have like this black G10 handle material and a lower mounted pocket clip. That way you have easy access to putting the knife away or getting the knife out. Now, what makes this knife so very unique is its locking mechanism. It is called the Triad lock. And you might be saying to yourself, man, that looks a lot like a backlock. Well, it is very, very similar to a backlock. It is mounted higher than a standard backlock. Backlocks are typically a lot lower or at the bottom of the knife. The Triad lock is more center to the upper part of the knife, and it acts a lot like a backlock. One of the main things that make the Triad lock so strong and able to take an insane amount of force, well over 1,500 pounds and over 2,000 I've seen. It is a lot like the backlock. You have a bar that goes over the tang of the knife when it is opened up, and what makes this very unique is it has a stop pin as well, which aids this in not being able to be broken easily. It has been done. I have seen it, but these can endure over 2,000 pounds of force. And that is getting to the point where you will never exert that much force on one of these knives. It's just head and shoulders above any other lock that I have seen, that it's not even relatively close. This is so overbuilt that the backlock is close, but it's not even on the same playing field as the Triad lock. Having that stop pin in there and the thicker bar, it just makes for an extremely, extremely durable lock. There has been many, many tests done on the AD10 and all of these knives that I'm mentioning right now. There are lots of videos with testing and test results. Now, that is not what we are doing here. We are just going over the locks and talking a bit about them and the knives that the locks are on. Next up is number 3, and this is another Andrew Demko design knife. This is the Cold Steel AD15. Andrew Demko's design, and Cold Steel manufactures this knife. Now, this also has a satin S35 VN drop point blade. You have G10 handles, and then you have a lower mounted pocket clip there. And you might be saying to yourself, this knife looks very unique, and it is. And what makes it very unique is its locking mechanism. Now, that is called the Scorpion lock. And the way I have thought to explain this lock is it is a lot like a backlock or the Triad lock, but it's exposed. So this really kind of shows you what is happening inside of an AD10 or a backlock knife, where that bar seats into the tang of the knife, and it is extremely strong. And what makes the Scorpion lock even more unique is because it is exposed. When you are squeezing on this knife, that is ultimately putting more pressure on this lock when it is engaged, making it even stronger. So with applied force by you, that in turn is making the lock even stronger than it already is, because it is preventing any type of movement. Now, it is naturally locked up. Some people have misconstrued that. I've seen people ask, well, that don't seem very safe if that's the only way to keep it locked. No, it is already locked. But what I mean is, when you grab a hold of this knife and squeeze on it, you are putting downward pressure on the Scorpion lock into the tang of the knife, and it is making for a very strong lockup, almost unbreakable. I have seen these go over 1,000 pounds, over 1,500 pounds, and they don't, if you were to use your force as well with the lock, I think it would get well over 2,000 pounds, just like the Triad lock, just like the Backlock. Now, we will go to the fourth and final lock. This is the newest lock out of the bunch. This is the Cold Steel Engage. This is not an Andrew Demko design knife or lock like the Scorpion lock and Triad lock. Those are all Andrew Demko's designs. Now, this does kind of pay homage to another lock that was done by Andrew Demko, the Shark lock. Very similar, but this is mounted more to the middle of the scales, where the Shark lock is up at the top of the scales, more up here. Now, this is called the Atlas lock. This has S35VN for the blade steel, G10 handles, and this one has a deep carry clip. The Atlas lock is very similar in the sense that you have a bar traveling up the spine of the knife, and when it is opened, you can see that bar go over the tang of the knife, and it also puts a bar, which is kind of like an internal stop, in front of the tang. So you have a claw going in behind the tang, and you have a bar going in front of it, making it extremely strong. Now, people have said that the Atlas lock is stronger than the Triad lock, and they have also said that the Triad lock is way stronger than the Atlas lock. I don't know. They have done some testing on the Atlas lock, and it has proved to be very strong. Now, we will be taking all these knives out in a future video and doing some testing with them, some live hands-on testing with no edits, no cuts. It's going to be what you see is what you get, and we're going to see how these knives hold up. But I think without question, the Atlas lock can handle over 1,500 pounds of force or weight. I think it could probably get over 2,000, and then at that time, I think even though the locks could handle the 2,000 pounds of force, the knife itself cannot handle that, and it will eventually break the scales away from the blade. It will rip the body off of the knife at that point. They haven't been able to figure out a way to continue and conduct those types of tests while keeping everything intact. Once a certain amount of weight is applied, I think it's just inevitable. But that is the 4 strongest locking knives in the world, in my opinion. Now, there are a couple other ones that are right up here with these. One that comes to mind is the ball bearing lock from Spyderco. They use it on their Manic series of knives. That is also one other lock that comes to mind that can handle a ton of force. The compression lock is also up there. That can handle quite a bit. But in my opinion, the way these are designed, these are very, very strong. The ball bearing lock and the compression lock have seen failure, but they are extremely high points of failure, whereas these don't experience failure until they don't, but the knife is basically destroyed, and that is when we see the testing stop on these. But I think all 4 of these are the top 4 in the world without question. That will be the end of this one, guys. Leave a comment down below and let me know what you guys think. Before you head out, give the video a thumbs up, and if you're still here, thank you. Hit the subscribe button if you are not subscribed. All is welcome here, and we would be glad to have you. That will conclude this video. I hope you have a good night, and I hope you have a safe night. I will catch you guys on the next one.